Robots aren't taking over. AI, well, maybe they are, and we just won't know it if it happens, right? It would be a disaster. Oh, come on. We know some people who are robots, and they don't really produce some of the nicest wines, do they?
Official media partner, the Italian Wine Podcast, is delighted to present a series of interviews and highlights from the 2023 Wine2w Business Forum, featuring Italian wine producers and bringing together some of the most influential voices in the sector to discuss the hottest topics facing the industry today. Don't forget to tune in every Thursday at 3 p.m. or visit theitalianwinepodcast.com for more information.
Allora, benvenuti a tutti. Welcome to everybody. I'm Valentina Abbona, and today I have the pleasure to introduce you to Will Predhomme, who's not just a great friend and a sommelier we met many years ago in Barolo, so in my hometown, overlooking some beautiful concerts and making some very nice memories while enjoying some good wine. From 10 years so far, Will is also leading basically the world with his marketing and communication company called Just By Him. He's based in Canada, in Ontario, in Toronto. Thank you very much. I'm sorry. In Toronto. And I think that today what it's going to tell us is going to be quite eye-opening, because it's going to lead us through how the Generation Z, and I believe that the youngest people now are 11 years old, so there is a lot to think ahead. He's basically going to throw us ideas on how these new wine drinkers could be taken into our beautiful world and what we can do to engage them more and more.
Thank you, Valentina. Thank you, everyone. So today's session, Gen Z, it is a confusing moniker, right? And that's essentially what this is. We're talking about a group of people. And as Valentina stated, the youngest is 11. We are not currently marketing to 11-year-olds. But the technology that they have grown up with and the ways that they learn, the ways that they think, all the way up to 26, and there's a bleed into the millennial generation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All of this is linked together. As a bit of a backstory, 10 years ago, I left hospitality. I was a sommelier for many, many years, and I wanted to build something different. I wanted to communicate what number of you are all doing with the audience, not just in the Canadian market, but to understand that fully. So I went down this journey, and my company now, we work specifically with trade associations around the world, marketing to Canadians at all levels. And it's business-to-business marketing, which is really important. While you all make tremendously good, unique wines, you need to be able to sell it. And each market has different ways of doing so, but then there are some fundamental bases. So what we'll cover today, we have a couple key learnings. So setting the stage for today, I don't have a magic bag full of all the answers. I'm hoping that you come away thinking a little bit differently about marketing or communicating with not just this generation that I'm referring to, but to everyone. And some of these concepts, and they are concepts, are not written in stone, and they will continue to evolve. So starting off with embracing the change in consumer dynamics. I mean, with Gen Z, it's the first generation which has been totally immersed in digital from start to end. I'm the last of the millennial generation, if you can believe that, 1981. So one of the big differentiators there when it comes down to communication is that we understand what it was like before having all this digital influence, so you can kind of bridge that gap. Now imagine your first memories in an iPad has been kind of omnipresent, right? It's almost related to growing up being told you're watching too much television, right? I'm sure we were, but now we have the same dynamic existing with a younger generation, except perhaps they have the capacity to be able to absorb it a bit more. So understanding that the power of interactive marketing, we're going to move into how marketing has evolved. It's no longer just your static, here's our print ad, here's our digital ad, here's our website, which we absolutely require and need. In fact, we're seeing some data going back to tactile and sensory influences to ensure that you're getting that communication along. But it's not just that, it's interactive. The value that you get from communicating in a way that you receive information back is something that Gen Z greatly values, and you see in the data going forward that it is incredibly valuable. The integration of technology, I'm sure you've heard AI numerous times throughout this whole thing. I am not going to harp on that, but I will talk about how we can observe and integrate these tools into our lives as a resource. They will not solve all of your problems. They will not give you all of the answers. Much like a carpenter starts their career off as an apprentice, learning how to use the tools of the trade, the tools that we're using here with technology are exactly that. They take some time to get used to, but they are wonderful and accessible tools for you to use in order to succeed. Balancing global appeal with local authenticity. Think global, be local, blah, blah, blah. That means nothing in this context, right? What we're looking at here is we have unprecedented access to everyone in the world, unlike any time before in history. And what Gen Z is showing to crave is that authentic touch, but then trying to retain the locality while being a product from Italy or from South Africa, from wherever, and communicate with those areas and bring that to those individuals. This distinctly resonates with Gen Z. You're going to see a lot of tie-in with previous generations as well. Like, it's very much the same yet different. We're going to go through a little bit of that. And let's loop it back to the ambassador program that Vinitaly has spearheaded for the last 10 years, which is the major premise for why we're here. I was fortunate enough to go through the program, I believe it was 8 years ago, give or take, and the influence that this program and those who attend, who have taken it, and what Vinitaly has invested in over the last 10 years to create these ambassadors. We're going to talk about a couple of the things that you can do if you are one, or if you're looking for some of that equity that has been brought out there, that brand equity or that training equity. We're going to talk about some of the tools that can be applied if you are one, or what you should look for through the ambassador program. All right. I'm just talking a lot, Valentina. Do you want to hop in here at all, or no? I don't want to put you on the spot.
I do have a number of questions for you,
oh, good.
which are coming. Yeah.
Oh, they're coming?
Yes.
All right, sweet. So let's talk about what Gen Z is, right? Big buzzword. Introduction to Gen Z, anytime between 97 and 2010. 2012, my apologies. So you're ranging from 26 years old to 11. This is not set in stone. This is a range. It's not that specific, but it really does refer to that generation that has never lived without some sort of technological influence, right? It's quite remarkable to think about it like that you can't take that away as well. So their behaviors and habits are very different. They're evolved. They're stronger set in behavior due to this. We're going to talk a bit about what that looks like, their key traits. Visual and interactive content. We've seen this. Who here has at least one social media app on their phone? Raise your hands. Come on, show me something here, everyone. For those of you who have been able to avoid this, I'm really envious. The influence and the pervasive nature of it all. But this is something that is very commonplace. You're born with it. It's where you get a lot of your information from, right? And utilizing this, not just in pictures, but interaction with videos, etc., has been resonating greatly amongst this generation. You see it bled into the millennial generation, and trends are showing that that's just going to continue as technology evolves. So relative to Gen Z's consumer behavior, they spend considerable amount of time online. We already know that. Influenced by social media, but also by peers. This is really important here. This goes to a couple of the next points. But the influence that those around them, which are also influenced by social media, has the strongest resonation between that generation than any other generation beforehand. which makes it quite hard to be able to crack into. It's an intimidating factor. If my friend is telling me that this is great, I'm immediately going to go out and do that. It is far stronger in this generation, will continue to do so. So how do you speak to the overarching community? We'll delve into that a little bit more, which leads to your values and brand loyalty. These sound like corporate clips, of something from a mission statement, but there is a huge BS detector that both the millennial and the Gen Z generations have, right? There's a knowledge of when you're being spoken at and spoken to. This resonates quite a bit. And having genuine communication, genuine thoughts, resonates far greater with this group of individuals than just the common, word speak of marketing in general, which is quite exciting for someone like myself who genuinely and passionately loves this industry, the tactile nature, the fact that all of you are creating something and expressing and trying to communicate this. It's noble, and there aren't too many that are in these rooms that are saying, I just want to make millions of gallons of wine without a face on it or without a story. That's just really not hugely part of this community that's been built here. So leading to the importance of authenticity. So authentic, you can fake it for a little bit, but again, you'll be run over fairly quickly with this generation if you are found to be lying or outside of your scope or whatever it is, and truthfully, your stories are they're the ones that they want to hear. Communicating that, whole other thing. But that being said, you have something to talk about, and it's quite attractive. And they like the innovation. Now, no one has ever said that the wine industry, when it comes down to marketing, has been particularly innovative. But I am going to show you a few examples from, larger organizations to smaller organizations to parallel industries that you can take that information and adapt. As we continue to go towards the future with all of these technological advancements, access to the ability to innovate and cost towards those has gone down, and it continues to go down. So we don't need to be absolutely right up front driving the way with most innovative social programs, et cetera. Just to have some knowledge makes a lot of sense, and knowing that this is valued, that innovation is definitely something that they're looking for. And then looking at the digital landscape, digital platforms. We haven't talked yet, but our social platforms are some of those. The Snapchats, the TikToks, depending on what culture you're coming from. I mean, WeChat, some of the older ones, some of the newer ones. This is how communication is done and will continue to be done in these manners. And if you're like me, I still don't get Snapchat. I'm still trying to figure it out. It doesn't really quite make sense to me quite yet, though I know that it has a huge influence. And I also know that their marketing campaigns have been traditionally expensive, but also are dropping in expense because of the emergence of new technologies out there and ways to communicate. So opportunities exist.
Well, I will stop you here 1 second.
Good.
I'm sorry, I have to sit down because this doesn't really go up too much. But remember that here you're speaking in front of a crowd of producers. At least I can see many friends and colleagues here, which are small, family-owned, very traditional wineries in a super traditional country, which is Italy. Mm-hmm. So I think that we are all a little bit scared to say that, the next generation for wine will look only at how the communication is made. We live in an area where truffle is very important, and now they just opened this beautiful truffle museum in Alba. And some data, which I found really interesting when visited, said that people remember only 1% of what they touch, 2% of what they hear, and 5% of what they see. So even through all of these systems, but yet they remember 35% of what they smell. And I think this is key when talking about distills into wine. How would you reply to that?
No, it's absolutely a great way, and that's why I'm glad you're here to bring it kind of into the conversation. we're going very high level here, right? And to your point, it's sensory experiences. How do we communicate this with the current generation or your target market right now, let alone the future? And that's not necessarily the point of this seminar here. I don't have that magic, that magic wand to be able to give you all the information of how to solve it. But what I will reiterate is that you have tactile, sensory products that are incredibly sought after, those stories, to be able to tell them. And I wouldn't necessarily begrudge the fact that technologically advanced marketing tools, et cetera, they're not really built for the wine industry unless you're a large commercial brand. But what you do want to do, and you do on every single bottle already, is you tell a part of your story. And how do we just take one little step forward with this knowledge, knowing that there are systems in place? There is a demographic which is craving what you are actually producing. If you've never been to Italy and someone says Italy to you, you immediately can conjure up what that feeling is, which is a gift. Like, that is a really remarkable thing. We have some tools we're going to talk about, which help to bridge that gap. So starting off with simple communication. You've done some really excellent work at Marchesi di Barolo in communicating your story about your family. Every time I see something from your posts, I see a member of your family talking, and it's constant communication. It's not just pictures anymore. There's small video clips, so on and so forth. This is remarkably effective in this room. There's a canary in the coal mine, which is pretty much every other business out there that is selling in a certain capacity, and you can take components of that to be able to apply at the most fundamental levels. So I'm hoping that's what you get. That I don't know if it, again, answered your question completely.
So you kind of make a transition from what you see, then you're trying to bring people to actually taste it and make that experience part of their own life.
Yes, it starts with awareness. It's almost like if you've got some extra bills on your credit card. No one ever really wants to open up their statement after Christmas, right? You look at your statement, you're like, oh no, I got to deal with this. But then you do, and you look at it, you're like, I can deal with this, so on and so forth. I can figure this out. This is very similar. And we can continue to, go the traditional way, which is, again, absolutely necessary. You've built a foundation that is incredibly hard to reproduce. But starting with awareness and then transitioning into these other aspects, I want to make sure you just at least know what's coming towards you. I think that's super important, and it's not a bad thing at all. And a lot of people are in the same boat. So talking about something that we can do, that you do already incredibly well, and perhaps can communicate a little bit more about, there's been a few, I believe Dr. Laura Catena spoke on agritourism, right? Hospitality, agritourism. That's one of the best things about coming over to Italy is the agriturismos that the wineries tend to incorporate in once they get to a certain level. Because it's full-on experiential. People crave this, right? It's getting easier and easier to communicate that fundamental touch, and this resonates with just about everyone. That Gen Z consumer, we can almost move Gen Z over here because they are definitely going to be building. You've got a little bit of time, but you can start applying this right now and getting on that kind of that track in order to be able to communicate when they do become of age. There'll be another generation coming behind. You'll be ahead of the game, right? But moving into interactive marketing, it's not just one thing, it's a conversation. We're no longer just pushing, we are now pushing and pulling. We are engaging you, and you have statistically, this presentation will be available to you afterwards. The very back, the very last slide, there's a reference page for where all of this information came from. These are all reference-based, HBR, et cetera, that we've delved into to putting into this program here. But introducing that there is a shift going on, applying these interactive techniques, whether it be having a tasting that isn't necessarily just here, to here, like I'm doing right now, but bringing you into it and having that conversation, you can go as far as utilizing polls, et cetera, but sometimes just asking opinions and bringing people into those conversations, making them feel part of it. You can do that much easier now than before, from afar or from close. Okay, so interactive content. Again, I brought up please check out the Marchesi di Barolo's, their Instagram feed right there. But you get nearly twice amount of the interaction from video than you do from still pictures. And we're talking about sometimes 15 to 35-second clips done on an iPhone. And the memorable nature of that, you've already brought up a few statistics of visual versus auditory versus everything. Bringing all of that in. Now, we can't smell yet through our computers, through our iPhones. We will see. I think they tried that in like 1960s, and it didn't quite work out. Smell-o-vision, I think they called it. I don't know if we're going to get there. But nonetheless, incorporating video, that's your fundamental start. Start there, couple clips, and everything can be also copied. So take a look at your favorite social media posts. Take a look at online. Find out what it is exactly that makes a great one. Quick little phone clip. You would be shocked at how effective those are. Some of the most effective posts, I was fortunate to build a digital subscription-based wine model many years ago. One of the most popular posts was taken off of a 6-year-old, it was an idea given to us by a 6-year-old's YouTube channel, and it was unboxing. You've seen the unboxing videos, you just can't help but watch, and some of the simplest sort of things. And those kind of efforts from a very basic level, you don't even need to be in them, have created more of a different type of energy around it than just verbal or visual.
So we must create a sort of expectation to engage people.
Expectation's always great. Again, recognizing that you have this wonderful product that represents more than just the wine itself. It represents a lifestyle. It represents something that people are craving. That's why Italian wine does so well in export markets. There's been a successful branding of that image, and it delivers. That's the coolest part. So to be able to speak to that, to create some anticipation, or show me that you're a person in front of me instead of a commercial. Not to say that those don't work, but that probably isn't the majority of us in the room here, right? So communicating in that capacity, simple, good step. There's a pathway out there. Managing our consumer expectations. So Gen Z, immersive experiences, not just speaking. And immersive can be just about anything that involves that dialogue and exchange. The benefits, brand loyalty to, and you have a responsibility almost, not just to your wine, your winery, but to your region. And sometimes we overlook the fact that a collective of individuals and wineries, if you are small family owned and perhaps not as well known, but bringing that message out that you are a place will have a stronger influence than having your one winery alone leading the charge. And we've seen this in places such as Barolo, Barbaresco 30, 40 years ago. I believe they're giving away the land. And then there was, well, relatively speaking, right? But then now this brand identity has been created due to whether it was willing or not, but the emergence of a sense of place. And you have that throughout all of Italy. Most wine regions that succeed have grasped onto that. Take Napa Valley, Burgundy, Bordeaux. They recognize they're part of a greater whole. And interacting with the consumer going forward is going to be the way to do that, instead of just telling a story. Sorry.
No, I was saying just that I think that what we are doing just now, communicating and exchanging ideas, is what helps also us producers to be able to send the right message. We don't feel as much as alone as probably the generation prior to our was. but we do feel more connected. And for sure, the tools that you're explaining are a good opportunity to move even forward in this.
Absolutely. It can be very lonely out there, especially if you've been an established producer and you're watching these generations come forward and you feel like you can't talk to them, which is often the case in certain capacities when we try to talk from our own perspective. But the cool thing is you have the content already. It's more so how we communicate that with them is what we're trying to tackle here. So engaging, we've already talked about that. Engaging in personalization, we're going to be moving into what that looks like. So with targeted media, et cetera, it's becoming more native, meaning if you're going to post something on any of your platforms, it's now native, going to be going towards your target audiences one way or the other, which is a personalization aspect. Now, you can enhance that. We're not going to talk about that right now. Those abilities exist just in a native capacity. But these are all things that are coming. Some you opt into, and some are just native if you just apply some of the fundamentals.
I think it's also important that we change a little bit our mindset because, again, being most of us very traditional in the way we communicate, it is true what you said. We do have the contents. Sometimes it's just difficult to explain them through the right platform, the right social media,
Absolutely.
whatever, because there is a very specific language that you should use.
Culture, languages, and we'll get into that. That leads into the global versus local components, right? It's a nuance. And the recognizing it to begin is that, so working with targeted experts in certain fields. If you're selling domestically, just like great, you already know that. But looking into external markets, there's resources available just even through a simple search that can kind of give you an idea of where you're going to be targeting, even starting with geography and language, et cetera. That's gotten a lot easier. So without having to overcomplicate it by making these choices, make your fundamental business choices and start to apply.
Who wants to be the next Italian wine ambassador? Join an exclusive network of 400 Italian wine ambassadors across 48 countries. Vinitaly International Academy is coming to Chicago on October 19th to 21st, and to Almaty, Kazakhstan from November 16th to 18th. Don't miss out. Register now at vinitaly.com.
For what concerns your experience, which are the markets you're looking at? Because you're not only focused on Canada.
No, so Canada is interesting in that we purchase more and we import more than we can consume. That's why. And when putting this together, doing our best not from a Canadian perspective. And we have very similar issues as well as far as marketing our wine industry domestically. We don't market it really on export because we don't produce enough. But our communication levels are at the same level, I would argue, that Italy, France, some of the places that communicate it very well, California, New Zealand, Australia. We're starting to see it from the larger levels, right? But we're not all that different, except we have more experience in bringing things in and being able to kind of communicate with even within our own environment. We have Quebec, which is French-speaking, very different culturally. They drink Pepsi instead of Coca-Cola. It's a very unique spot. And then you go to West Coast, you have more of a Pacific Northwest vibe. You go to Alberta, and my colleague and friend Gurvinder last year called me out for saying this, but you have a bit of a Wild West nature there more than anything. East Coast, we have this diversity of tiny population, but the big thing is we bring in more than we can produce ourselves, so it exposes us quite a bit to all this diaspora of exported product. So it makes it a bit easier for us to perhaps understand that aspect, and that's where this is largely coming from.
And you also have a lot of clients based in the old countries, right?
Yeah, about 50%. Old countries, the fun countries. We work directly. We've worked with Vinitaly in the past, Collezioni, worked with Chianti Classico, Consorzio, Brunello di Montalcino in the U.S., Oregon, Washington State, all agriculture-based, but largely places that we we bring in more products from that have a story, and the things that we can't produce, right? We just don't have that ability. So when I'm saying that there is a craving for this kind of experience, we don't have it. And we're coming from that target audience. Now, marketing to the United States, 10 times larger, 50 states, 50 different cultures, if you will. You can take us as a test subject for the most part. It's a small kind of sampling. Other markets that you're targeting, there's some really phenomenal perspectives on new and emerging markets right there. I would love to be able to understand how to market to them, because a lot of this will apply when it comes down to access to tools and information. That's the biggest part about this whole thing. This is universal, what is going on. Gen Z it's not just a North American Canadian concept. This is a generational component, and it has to be linked to cultural and aspects related to exposure to the tools that are out there, right? So in Kazakhstan, they will still have access to the same tools that we have in Canada, that you will have in Italy, and that generation will be exposed to it as such.
So nowadays we have more, let's say, horizontal opportunities rather than the past, where
which makes it more complicated, doesn't it, right? It's like, oh, great, we have all the access in the world. Wine quality and wine access has never been greater than it is right now, yet it's harder to kind of communicate that aspect, right? And we can go to all the seminars that we want, and that's why focusing on just what is going to be available, what is available right now, putting a toe in. Like, I won't lie, I used AI to draft the concept of this based off of my business's background and target it towards this audience, use another AI program to be able to formulate the slides in order to be able to present to all of you here, right? So, and it wasn't very, like, I can do it. I'm not technologically savvy, but taking a little bit of time to understand these things has helped quite a bit, and it can speak a little bit more fluidly than I would off just the top of my head, and it's pretty much free.
And when it comes to our industry, do you have some examples to share of
Sure
successful?
Do. These are successful. Now, I want to put in context. There are 3 examples here. One is directly related to the wine industry, and we've probably all seen it or heard about it, or if you haven't, you can understand the scale of it. And this is a campaign that was completed perhaps 5 years ago, and that would be the 19 Crimes. I don't know, is that available, or have you seen any of this over in Europe at all? No, it's a Treasury Estates brand. They used augmented reality, right? Very expensive at the time to be able to put up, but basically, pick up a label with your smartphone, camera goes over top of it, all of a sudden you see a person on the label start talking, right? It was super trippy when this came out. But it increased their initial order, or their initial run of 4 million bottles to 17 in 6 months. So 4 million cases. 4 million cases to 17 million cases. Big, like, we are not there yet. But what I will say is that augmented reality that they spent tons of money on and created this really great business case studies has become nearly free and accessible to everyone, which, whether you're applying it or not, look into it. It does not need to be complicated, but you're able to incorporate something on a label when someone takes a phone, puts it right over top. And that will get cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. It could just be your vineyard. Just kind of all of a sudden could be like the leaves of the vines, or I was thinking about this earlier on. Imagine it's fall and you pick up that bottle and you put your phone over top of it and it shows you a snapshot of the fall, the vineyard as it looks like in the fall. You do the same thing in the summer, you do the same thing in the spring. These are things that are accessible to you now and very inexpensive to do, to apply. It's still a little bit there, but they're resonating with this generation. They're walking around with a phone in their hands the entire time. Have you seen the new Ray-Bans with the cameras, right? They don't look like the Google Glass, where it looked like a broke Geordie LaForge, from Star Trek. They're stylish, they're cool, and they're creepy as well, right? Because the amount of that, privacy laws will come in, so on and so forth. But that ability there is resonating and will become more and more accessible. It comes down to access, right? So 19 Crimes, expensive at the time, big successful brand. What do we learn from it? Well, we have all the data of success, and then we have a lessening of costs relative to doing something as simple as that. So that will become more incorporated, and that stuff resonates. Now we're going to move over to an adjacent industry. So this is a distillery from Kentucky. And feel free to look all this stuff up if you want. But the rabbit hole was really kind of cool. They created a "You Are Here" campaign. In fact, I've seen this to a certain degree. Chianti Classico launched its UGA map, which is an interactive map. You can put it up on the screen, move it around, etc. You can go online, kind of fly over top. And this is an amazing step in the right direction of being able to have a conversation. Like you're not quite stepping into that. We aren't getting into VR yet, but that will happen eventually as things get more and more accessible. But here they basically created a sense of place in Kentucky, and you would scan the label, it would bring you to that spot. You could walk through on your phone, interactive, almost like a house tour. And it was highly successful for them, giving them a sense of place. You felt like you were there. You'd be able to describe certain aspects. It is disproportionate, the amount of time and effort and mindset that individuals put towards wine in their daily life. Even if it's just a second of picking something up off of a shelf, it's quite remarkable. In all the choices throughout your day, there's a disproportionate amount of time being thought about what they're buying and what they're going to consume later on. So getting that little snapshot inside of it is kind of cool. And it started off with labels themselves to back labels, the original chateau or the vineyard or whatever it may be and here, even the font and typeset gives you a sense of place. It's continued evolution of that. And then moving a little bit farther down the road here, but this is incorporated e-commerce, which it's probably just as complicated here as it is pretty much in every other market in the world. But there's a significant tax base that's starting to contribute and opening up the lines of e-commerce, if you will. This is a great example. The Bon Vive basically take a picture of the label, acted as a QR, and created a vending machine where you could take a look at all of the flavors and click one. It would go right to your e-commerce store and send it over. Do you have e-commerce opportunities such as like Drizzly, et cetera, in
Italy,
yeah.
you mean? Yes, of course.
Yes, of course. So in places like Canada, we barely do, right? Even though it sounds like we should, our laws have prohibited that, and we're starting to get into that a little bit more with the e-commerce direct-to-consumer. But those sort of aspects, if you are already utilizing some of these delivery services, these e-commerce services, to be able to link those is becoming easier and easier. Again, all of this relates to a generation that has everything in their hands, has always had everything in their hands. How do we get from what you've created to them? So all we're kind of scoping into. All right, trends in the global wine market. All right, so has anyone applied or experimented with smart bottling? Smart bottling, adding a little chip to your capsule or label. So this is something, again, used to be quite expensive, becoming less and less expensive right now. But putting an NFC logo or a little tag, basically, it can be incorporated into the labels. They're basically little beacons. So as you walk by, it will ping your phone to a certain way, and depending on how your privacy settings are, which have you noticed that like every web page you go to, you have to accept the cookies now? It's like, is that like a new thing? Or is that Italy? It's pretty wild.
Well, you can actually choose, but most people, just to be quick, they say accept all.
Yeah, I totally do that too.
If you take a little bit of time, then you can
yeah, no, I'm way too impatient for that. And
I think they play on that very much.
Yeah, no kidding. So that leads to the point here that while there are privacy laws, et cetera, there's always going to be a way to go around them. But these NFC tags, you're going to start seeing them as options. And this is another way developed to work with the millennial generation, the generations coming afterwards. But they're all fighting for your information. As you walk by, you might not notice it then, but later on, it knows that you've walked by your bottle, another bottle, it'll target you immediately. It used to be about 50 cents per, depending on your volumes, that you do per label or per capsule to put these on. They're getting closer to 3 to 5 cents now, and will continue to get cheaper and, in fact, more incorporated. You don't even see it. So really kind of cool, and it allows, again, that kind of access. So maintaining your local identity, I mean, that's, if you're from Italy, it's going to be quite hard to be able to kind of break outside of that, right? But being able to communicate that on a global level, like a really great example, New Zealand will change their marketing and flavor profiles slightly based on the markets it's targeting, right? We don't need to do that now. In fact, here, we probably want to embrace that a little bit more and be definitively built upon. So the role of digital marketing and global outreach, social media platforms, choosing them. We've already talked about this. We're kind of going round and round, but depending on the market you're looking at, WeChat to TikTok to whatever, these are some of the channels, and they should be also, again, in addition to, if you're already doing traditional campaigns, please keep on doing those. There are references in there that bring you, there are more touch points. You know, if a print magazine is something that you're working with, incorporating the ability, even now with those really ugly QR codes, for whatever reason, those things actually came back. That totally worked. But nonetheless, that ability to communicate twice is definitely in there. So don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. And sustainability and ethical considerations. I think California has done a tremendous job in really embracing the fact of, like, that is their mission. It is quite defined. They are leading it. Leonardo DiCaprio did this when he was like 13 years old. Everyone thought he was crazy, talking about organic, sustainable, blah, 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 blah. It is a real thing. This resonates tremendously, fundamentally. Diversity, inclusion, ethics resonates wholeheartedly with this generation, which is quite refreshing. You know, tech, we could probably skip this stuff. I don't think we really need to do that. A little bit. Augmented reality.
I think is very much adventurous for us, but it was interesting to hear how, of course, we have to pay attention also at what the new opportunities are. Again, we are talking in Italy where the producers there are mostly, small, family-owned. Probably they don't even, with few exceptions, have the budget for looking at this as per right now, but it's important to keep it in mind. I have a provocative question for you, if you if you don't mind. That goes a little bit outside what we are looking at specifically. Do you think that the new laws, especially if we're looking at the monopolies in Canada or Northern Europe, all the attention that they're putting on the, let's say, healthy behavior when it comes to drinking alcohol, is going to be mitigated by a better communication? Yeah,
that's a can of worms. Well, we've all experienced it, and that trend is going to continue on. So I would dig it down to the fundamental aspect. There is more of a focus on authenticity, honesty, ethics, trust, right? So we've already seen an attrition in many markets, a reduction in sales. We have it in Ireland, have it in Canada, have it in New Zealand. These are the canaries in the coal mine. So we can see that it'll be harder to sell products. Applying some of these things might help. They are getting less expensive. They're getting more accessible, and I guarantee you, as you go on into the future, no matter where you're at in your winery's development or what you're doing, you inevitably go into a bottle shop, and you're going to start to see these things where you're going to start getting tagged one way or the other. So that's one aspect. Communication will be key, but your story, your authenticity, is probably the thing that's going to keep you going, staying true to what you're doing, owning it, not trying to sell something that it isn't, and you'll feel better about it as well. These guys here, role of ambassadors. It's largely the same. As an ambassador myself, I used to be in this kind of capacity here, interacting, doing interactive marketing campaigns. You're telling the story, but it's not just telling the story, it's bringing you into it. I wish we could have done something like that, round table or groups, et cetera, doing polls would have been super cool. Big production for one individual while trying to work, et cetera. But having that dialogue is incredibly important, and you have that ability. You also have the insight. That's 10 years of learning, of experiencing, being able to bring that up in an effective way, incredibly important. You have these relationships. I look around this room here, there's a number of people that I've known present company included, for many years that we have relationships stronger than ever before, and you have advocates and someone who can tell your story right there. So you have these people around here who have invested their time to be able to tell your story. Please take advantage of it, and if you are an ambassador, realize that you are, and you're here to help to tell their story, not yours. Brand advocacy and promotion. When I say brand, not necessarily a winery. Like a brand, it's an image, it's a feel, it's you're translating this for not just Gen Z, not just millennials, but when you go back to your market, you're a representative, you are an ambassador. How you present, the effort that's been put in is going to go forward, and that responsibility is pretty awesome to have. Experiential marketing initiatives. I challenge you, please go out there, have a tasting, not just me to you. Incorporate people. Have them bring a bottle. Ask them to contribute. That right there creates a dialogue, and all of a sudden, someone is bought into that seminar, that discussion, and you've brought that. Absolutely powerful, works out incredibly well, and it's leading into communicating in that two-way street. Be ethical, pretty easy, and provide some feedback.
So basically, it is important to be very technologically prepared, but human people are so key in our businesses.
Absolutely. Robots aren't taking over. AI, well, maybe they are, and we just won't know it if it happens, right? It would be a disaster. Oh, come on. We know some people who are robots, and they don't really produce some of the nicest wines, do they? You want some of those, that human interaction. That's why we're all here. It's still a very human industry, and I'm not here to promote this. Like, if I could, I would be doing everything handmade and communicating person to person, and hopefully be able to have a nice lifestyle that way, right? Having an awareness that these are here, they will continue to be here, they will be tools. You can choose to use them or not. You can augment what you're currently doing, and they will get less expensive and more accessible as we go along. That is the only message I wanted to bring to you right now. That's along with your takeaways. Adapt to like we already have with millennials, it's just more and more so. Ambassadors, you've got a job. Take a look at the technology. Just take a look. It was really hard for me not to go down the rabbit hole with this over and over and over again. Stick to it, because you can keep doing that. Find one aspect, do a quick little search, ask some colleagues that are involved, communicate with each other, remaining true to your brand, to your wine, and being able to communicate it, understanding there's multiple cultures around the world, absolutely imperative. And future-proof your strategies. What that means is basically just keep looking. Stay aware. Everyone's going to tell you one way or the other that this is the way, that's the way. There is no way. Just exposing yourself to these things, making a choice on them or not making a choice, it's absolutely fine. I have the luxury of having data at my fingertips, and my company is built to be able to help to communicate that, right? I selfishly want your wines in Canada. It's really simple, right? And if we can build that along the way, we only work with tactile human people. My information's here. I've got a tremendous team of support, and we'd love to be able to help you out if we can. Anyway, that's everything. Valentina, thank you for bringing us down to the
thank you, Will,
human level.
for making this happen and for giving us all a different perspective on what our opportunities are without, however, forgetting the tangible aspects of our industry.
Listen to the Italian Wine Podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We're on SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Himalaya FM, and more. Don't forget to subscribe and rate the show. If you enjoy listening, please consider donating through ItalianWinePodcast.com. Any amount helps cover equipment, production, and publication costs. Until next time, cin cin.